The Premier League and Football Manager have teamed up for FM25, which is incredibly exciting news. And as you guys know already, I have rebuilt every single club in the Premier League for the 24-25 season. But in every single one of them rebuilds, there is 3 variations of each manager's tactics. And today, I'm going to be breaking down every single one of them tactics so you guys can play exactly like your favourite managers in real life. Now, what you got to do, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see a specific manager, there'll be a timeline all the way along the bottom. You can skip to your team, or if you want to see me create every single tactic, just sit down, grab some popcorn and watch an absolute masterclass. And we are going to be doing this in alphabetical order. So starting off with Arsenal and Mikel Arteta's fantastic 4-3-3. Now you can see there's some signings here which I've made as well. Again, if you do want to see the actual rebuild side of it, the signings we made, etc., that's all going to be in the description down below or back on the channel. It's 8.5 hours long, but it's an absolute banger. Started off a sweeper keeper on support in goal, and inside forward, inverted fullback on defend on the right hand side with 2 ball playing defenders in the centre back roles with no further instructions. And our first person to edit is an inverted wing back on support on the left hand side with get further forward and tackle harder. And he's going to create a double pivot with Declan Rice as a defensive midfielder on support with take for your risks and hold position. We have Martin Odegaard as an advanced playmaker on support with roam from position with a Bere Eze on central midfielder on attack, moving the channels and tackle harder. We have an inside forward on support on the left hand side with stay wider, a winger on attack on the right hand side with cut inside of the ball, shoot more often, and an advanced forward on attack up front with roam from position and tackle harder. It is set to a positive mentality. In possession, we are middle on the width, we are passing into space, playing our defence, working the ball into the box, low crosses, shorter passing directness, standard tempo, be more expressive. In transition, counter press, counter, slow pace down, distribute to fullbacks and to centre backs, and our possession is a high press system, a high defensive line, step up more often and trigger the press just 1 tick on more often. Now, if you don't know how these work, we have got 3 tactical variations, a standard, an attacking and a defensive. These are normally exclusive to Patreon, but today I'll give them every single one to you. So the attacking variation, we have gone to a standard goalkeeper on defend in goal. The back 4 is pretty much the same, inverted fullback on defend, ball playing defender on defend, ball playing defender on defend, with the inverted wing back on support with the same instructions of get further forward and tackle harder. Declan Rice pretty much stays the same as well with take for your risks and hold position. But we have a winger on attack on the right hand side of cut inside of the ball, shoot more often. That advanced playmaker moves up from central midfield to cam, still with roam from position on support. A shadow striker on attack with no further instructions, and inside forward on support on the left hand side with stay wider, and then an advanced forward on attack up front, roam from position and tackle harder. Still now set to a attacking mentality. In possession, pass into space, play at defence, shorting passing directness, slightly higher tempo, be more expressive, work the ball into the box with low crosses. In transition, counter press, counter, distribute to centre backs and fullbacks and slow the pace down. And out of possession, a much higher defensive line, a high press, triggering the press as much as possible, preventing that short goal distribution and step up more. And finally, the defensive variation. We go to a goalkeeper on defend in goal, a wing back on support on right, ball player and wing back on support on the left. So you can see we've changed to a more traditional 4-back system. The only change is we're going to tackle harder on Alexander Zinchenko. We have a DM on defend now in centre defensive midfield with take fewer risks, a centre mid on support with moving the channels and tackle harder. Same for the advanced playmaker on support, just with roam from position. We have now made it though a more 4-3-3 system rather than the 3-2-2-3. So an inside forward on attack with stay wider, a winger on attack with cut inside of the ball and shoot more often, and an advanced forward on attack with roam from position and tackle harder. Still a positive mentality, but you can see we are now more direct and going way faster tempo. So slightly fairly wide on the attacking width, pass into space out of defence, slightly shorter passing directness, but it is in the middle, and 1 higher on the tempo and low crosses. In transition, we are set to counter press and counter and take short goal kicks, with out of possession being a standard defensive line, a high press line of engagement, and a trigger press of just 1 more often. And that is fantastic Mikel Arteta's 3 tactics. Next up is Unai Emery's Aston Villa formation, and we start off with a sweeper keeper on defend in goal. We have a wing back on support on the right hand side with run wide with ball, and the same on the left hand side, wing back support, run wide with ball. We have two ball playing defenders with no further instructions. We have a position that very rarely gets used, but it's perfect for John McGinn. It's a wide midfielder on attack with take more risks and sit narrower. With an inverted winger on attack on the right hand side, take more risks and sit narrower. We have a DLP on support with no further instructions, and a box-to-box midfielder on support with no further instructions. A shallow striker on attack in Cam with no further instructions, and a pressing forward on attack up front, no further instructions. A positive mentality in possession. We are set to the standard attacking width, pass into space, play out of defence, slightly shorter passing directness, slightly higher tempo. In transition, we are counter-pressing, distributing quickly to centre-backs and to full-backs, and taking short goal kicks. And out of possession, a high defensive line with a mid-block attacking line with a trigger press of much more often and preventing that short goal distribution. That makes a really sort of tight, compact midfield, which then, means we can block him in and then counter-attack as quick as possible. We have got the attacking variation now, which moves into a 4-2-3-1. So, super keeper on defend in goal, wing back on the right-hand side, run on the ball, the same on the left-hand side, two ball-playing defenders. Defence does not change at all, but now, in the end, we have got dual volantes. One will tackle harder and get further forwards. You have an inverted winger on attack on the left-hand side, take more risks and sit narrower. An inverted winger on attack on the right-hand side, take more risks and sit narrower. A shallow striker on attack, no further instructions, and an advanced forward on attack with no further instructions. In possession, we are a middle, fairly wide, pass into space, approach play out defence, overlap left and right, shorter passing directness, but with maximum tempo and run at the defence. By the way, this is a positive mentality. In transition, counter press, counter, distribute quickly to centre-backs and full-backs, and take short goal kicks. And out of possession, high defensive line, high press system, triggering that press as much as possible and preventing short goal distribution. We move back into the 4-4-1-1 for our defensive variation, and we go sweeper keeper and defend in goal. Wing back on support, no further instructions. Same for the ball players and for the left hand side wing back. So very standard defence, just taking off that run wide with ball. A wide midfielder on support with sit narrower, and an inverted winger on support with sit narrow as well, looking to make it as compact as possible in the middle. We have a box to box midfielder on the right hand side, a ball midfielder on support on the left hand side with Mark tighter, an advanced playmaker on support in Cam, no further instructions, and a pressing forward and attack, no further instructions. A balanced mentality in possession, standard width, pass into space, play at defence with a much shorter passing directness, looking to keep that possession. Dribble less on the dribbling side of things as well. In transition, counter press, slow pace down, distribute to centre-backs, full-backs, and take short goal kicks. Without possession, a mid-block, a high defensive line, and preventing short goalkeeper distribution. That is Unai Emery's 3 tactics for Villa, and we ended up finishing in 5th place with an FA Cup win. Next up is Andoni Iraola's 4-2-3-1 tiki-taka style of play, and this is one of my favourite tactics that we have created. This is just a single tactic. There is not 3 variations for this one. It is one of the last ones we've done, and it wasn't actually its own video, so it is just the one tactic. We have Neto in goal, super keeper on defend, a wing back on support on the right hand side with tackle harder, a wing back on support on the left hand side with tackle harder, 2 ball playing defenders with no further instructions, a ball midfielder on support on the left hand side, no further instructions, and a DM on defend with tackle harder. An inside forward on attack on the right hand side, roam from position and sit narrower, a winger on attack on the left hand side, cut inside of the ball and tackle harder, an advanced playmaker on support in the cam role with pass it shorter and roam from position with the advanced forward on attack up front, tackle harder. A positive mentality in possession. We are set to shorter passing directness, standard tempo, play defence but go left and right and fairly wide on the attacking width. In transition, we are set to counter press and counter while taking short goal kicks, and out of position, a high defensive line, a high press system, triggering the press much more often and preventing short goal distribution, and that got us all the way to 9th place in the Prem with Iraola's fantastic 4-2-3-1. Next up, Thomas the Frank Engine, and these tactics, I loved them last season. They're slightly tweaked for the 24-25 season as well, so let's get into them. We start with Flecken in goal, super keeper on support, support, a wing back on support on the right hand side, shoot as often and stay wider, a wing back on support on the left hand side, shoot as often, stay wider, 2 ball playing defenders in centre back, no further instructions, a DM on defend in the middle, no further instructions, a box amongst midfielder, get further forward, move in the channels and tackle harder, with an advanced playmaker and support with roam for position and tackle harder, an inside forward on attack, sit narrower, an inside forward on attack, sit narrower on the left, and a pressing forward on attack in the middle with no further instructions, a positive mentality in possession, attacking width as completely narrow, but player defence, overlap left and right. So you do sit very narrow, but you have these attacking wing backs which get involved out wide. Shorter passing directness, set with a run at defence and dribbling, and slightly higher on the tempo. In transition, we are set to counter press, counter, distribute to the flanks, and take long kicks, and out of possession, a high defensive line, a high press system, trigger the press 1 tick more often, and prevent short goalkeeper distribution. Onto the attacking variant, a subtle few changes. Defense stays the exact same, but what we only have changes for is this advanced playmaker on attack, which goes to roam for position and tackle harder, and the advanced forward goes there rather than the pressing forward. In possession, I believe it's the exact same for in transition and for out of possession as well. So very, very simple on positive still as well. And in the defensive variants, we go slightly more defensive. Defense changes slightly to a fullback on support rather than a wing back, with run wide, shoot less often, and stay wider. Same on the left hand side as well. 2 ball playing defenders, a DM on defend in the middle, a box to box on the left hand side, move into channels and tackle harder, with a centre midfielder on support on the right hand side of shoot less often and move into positions. Inside forward attack on the right and left, same with sit narrower, and still a pressing forward and attack. We are now set to a balanced mentality. In possession, you can see it's ever so slightly slower on the tempo, still running a defence, player defence, left and right overlaps, narrow system again. In transition, doing the exact same stuff, but now slowing the pace down ever so slightly, and the defensive line and the high press stays the same as well. And these 3 tactics in conjunction were absolutely banging. We come 6th in the Premier League and won the FA Cup. So Thomas the Frank Engine, choo choo, onto Europe for Brentford. Now the Brighton tactics not only absolutely smash it in real life, as they are currently 2 wins and 0 losses, but they're also smashing it in FM. We come 4th place in the league with the young manager's tactics. Fantastic stuff. But let me show you the actual tactics we used. A goalkeeper on defend in goal, a ball playing defender on the left and on the right with no further instructions, with Boyomo in the middle with take fewer risks. We have wing back on support on the right hand side, run wide and stay wider, and a wing back on support on the left hand side of run wide and stay wider. A Volante as the left DM with tackle harder, and a roaming playmaker on the right with no further instructions, with this very fluid front 3 and inside forward, inverted winger on attack on the left hand side and the right hand side, no further instructions, with the complete forward attack up front, no further instructions. Positive mentality in possession, slightly higher tempo, slightly shorter passing directness, player defense left and right, fairly wide on the attacking width as well. In transition, counter press and distribute to the centre backs, and out of possession, a high defensive line, a high press system, and triggering that press just 1 more tick. We then go to a more attacking variation, where really the only change is the Baleba goes to a Volante on attack with tackle harder. I will just click through every position just in case there's a few like that, with dribble more on the right and left hand side of ball playing defenders. Wing backs, I believe, are the same for the roaming playmaker as well. Inverted wingers now had shoot more often and roam for position on, and the complete forward stays the same. Positive mentality still in possession, much higher on the tempo now, shorter passing directness, be more expressive, player defense left and right, and fairly wide on the attacking width. In transition, still just counter press, distribute quickly now though, and distribute to the centre backs, and out of possession, the higher defensive line and the high press system, while triggering the press much more often. Now, what I have seen in the recent days of actually watching Brighton is they now set up in a full-back system. When researching the tactic, this is what came up. Obviously, things might have changed. If he has now run a fullback, there is slight things you could change. Basically, what you want to do is move the centre back into cam and keep everything else really the same. Drop the wing backs back into a fullback. The Volante and roaming playmaker works fine. The cam will probably use an attacking midfielder on support. and you're pretty much there. I would still keep this very similar sort of high press system. If you do want to play a fullback variation, we do also have a defensive variation though. Goalkeeper on defend in the middle there with no further instructions. The 3 defenders go back to being all basic, ball playing defender on cover and 2 on defend. Wing backs on support just have run wide with the ball, a ball and fielder on support, no further instructions, and a DM on defend with tackle harder and mark tighter. We now have an inside forward on support on the right hand side, no further instructions. Same for the inverted winger on support on the left hand side with a complete forward on attack up front. A positive mentality still, but in possession we are now being slightly slower on the tempo, still time wasting. Sorry, now we are time wasting. We haven't been doing that before. Slightly shorter on passing directness and playing for set pieces, low crosses, and same on the attacking fairly width. Counter press, counter distribute to the centre backs, and out of possession, we are a high defensive line, a high press system. So you can see this one's more of sort of the get the ball and go for it rather than that sort of invite the press that Brighton like to do in real life. This is more just sort of playing against the big sides. We'll keep the ball when we can. When we get it, lump it up to the greasers up top, use the speed, use the attacking intelligence and score some goals. And it worked a treat. We ended up coming 4th in the Premier League on 73 points and we won the Carabao Cup. So a fantastic set of Brighton tactics. Next up is Enzo Maresca's Chelsea 4-3-3 formations, and they are incredible. I will go through very quickly the results after we've gone through the tactics. But starting off, a sweeper keeper on defend in goal with pass it shorter, an inverted wing back on support on the right hand side, no further instructions, and an inverted fullback on defend on the left hand side, no further instructions. 2 ball players, no further instructions, a DM on defend, no further instructions. Moving on to the attacking places. We've got a box-to-box midfielder as our left centre mid with no further instructions, and a Metzala on support with dribble more, tackle harder on the right hand side, with an inside forward on attack with cross aim centre, stay wider and tackle harder, with an inside forward on the left with shoot more often, stay wider and tackle harder, with an advanced forward up front on attack, close down more and tackle harder. We have a positive mentality. In possession we are set to stick, same on the width, play defence, short passing directness, slightly higher tempo, work the ball into the box with low crosses and be more expressive. In transition, counter press, distribute to centre backs and take short goal kicks, and out of possession a high defensive line, a high press system, step up more, get stuck in and trigger that press as much as often. But we didn't just use this tactic, we had an attacking variation and defensive variation as well. So first of all, the attacking variation, sweeper keeper on defend, pass it shorter, inverted wing back on support, inverted fullback, and the 2 ball players. That all stays the same, but we now have a DLP on defend in the central defensive midfield position with a box-to-box midfielder on support on the right hand side of get further forward and tackle harder, and a Metzala on attack on the left hand side, dribble more and tackle harder. We then have an inside forward on support on the left, shoot more often, stay wider, tackle harder, and an inside forward on attack on the right hand side, cross aim centre, stay wider and tackle harder, with that advanced forward, closing down more and tackling harder. Now Chelsea at the start of this season have looked to show up in a 4-2-3-1 more often than not. It's very simple. The changes we would make, pretty much we'll move this Metzala into an attack midfielder on support, have the dual DMs pretty much still as a DM, and then probably a volante so we can keep that sort of attacking left central midfield position. But it's a very, very similar sort of the way we're going to play is going to be very similar. Metzala gets involved anyway, and with the inside forwards, they're going to get in these spaces. So you won't see too much difference from playing the 4-3-3 to the 4-2-3-1, but if you do, simple changes, one up to attacking midfielder on support, and the DMs, a DM and a volante. We are set on the attacking variation still though as attacking. In possession we are set to fairly wide on the attacking width, overlapping left and right, play defence, shorter passing directness and a higher tempo, be more expressive. In transition we are set to counter press, distribute quickly, distribute to centre backs and take short goal kicks, and out of possession a high defensive line, a high press system, stepping up more, getting stuck in, preventing short goalkeeper distribution and triggering the press much more often. Finally, the defensive variation. Defensive wise, now we're going to go to a traditional fullback system. So Mamardashvili in goal, sweeper keeper on defend, but we now have a wing back on support on the right hand side, followed up by a fullback on support on the left hand side. Still got 2 ball playing defenders in the middle with a DM on defend just in front. We have a box to box midfielder on support and an advanced playmaker on support on the right hand side. First instruction changes, dribble more and tackle harder. A winger on support on the left hand side, get further forward and tackle harder. An inside forward on attack on the right-hand side, cross aim centre, stay wider and tackle harder. With an advanced forward on attack, we've closed down more and tackle harder. We are set to a balanced mentality. In possession, we are very, very sort of basic. Play at defence and into space. That is all I want you to do. In transition, counter press, counter, distribute to centre backs and take short goal kicks. While out of position, a standard defensive line, still getting stuck in, still got that high press, preventing the goal kick distribution and triggering the press much more often. Just a more set 4-3-3 system, and it worked a treat. We won the Carabao, the FA Cup, the Europa League, and come second in the Premier League, just 3 points off City. So Nottm Forest's 4-3-3 absolutely cooked. Moving on now to the Ole Glasner formations. We are set out in a 3-4-2-1, and again, these formations were absolutely fantastic. We are starting off a sweeper keeper on support in goal, no further instructions. A ball playing defender on the right with stay wider, and on the left with stay wider. A central defender on cover in the middle with no further instructions. We have Tyrick Mitchell, a wing back with support on the left, tackle harder and mark tighter, with Munoz on the right with tackle harder and mark tighter. A ball winning midfielder on the left hand side with defend and mark tighter, and a DM on support, tackling harder, you never guess it, mark tighter. A very aggressive midfield there with the wing backs as well. An attacking midfielder on attack with the left, run wide and roam, and the same on the right hand side, trying to create that Eze Elise style of play they did have last season, with that complete forward and attack up front with no further instructions. We are set to a positive mentality. In possession, we are set to a very high tempo, slightly shorter on the passing directness, playing out of defence, overlapping left and right with a fairly narrow attacking width, keeping it very compact with some lovely play in the middle of the park. In transition, counter press, counter, distributed centre backs and take short kicks. And out of possession, a high press system, a high defensive line, getting stuck in and triggering that press much more often, which makes this sort of midfield, wing back, attacking midfielder so compact for teams to get through, and we're very, very good defensively as well. You can see that from the data hub, one of the best in the league at 0.92 conceded per game, and that is simply because of how compact this midfield was. We go into the attacking variation, there is some slight tweaks. I believe there's no changes in the defence, there isn't, but we get to the wing back on attack now with tackle harder and mark tighter on the left and the right. But midfielder on defence still stays on mark tighter, and the defensive midfielder stays the same as well. The attacking midfielders stay the same, but we now have an advanced forward on attack up front rather than the complete forward. Still set to a positive mentality. In possession, fairly narrow attacking width, out of defence, overlapping left and right. Be more expressive, a higher tempo and standard on the passing directness. In transition, counter press, counter, distribute to the centre backs and take short goal kicks. And out of possession, a high defensive line, a high press system, trigger that press as much as possible and get stuck in. And then the formation, which I think really was the difference maker, is the defensive variation. Now again, there is very subtle tweaks, but they worked an absolute treat. So defensively, the exact same. But what you will now notice is we have wing backs on attack in a defensive variation, and that's because the attack midfielders now drop in and create a much more compact defence, and on attack in the counter, the wing backs get forward, and they were unbelievable. And wing backs on attack, tackle harder and mark tighter left and right. The ball midfielder on defence stays as mark tighter, and the defence midfielder just goes to defend, keep him on tackle harder and mark tighter. We now have these sort of roamy attacking midfielders on support, both with run wide and roam from position, but on support now, so they will get back defensively and help out with a pressing forward on attack up front. So really, we are defending, and then when we get on the ball, we are counter-attacking using the width. We are set to a balanced mentality, and you can see in the possession exactly what we're looking to do. Overlap left and right, play out of defence, short passing directness with a higher tempo. In transition, counter-press, counter, distribute to centre-backs, and take short goal kicks. So that allows us to, as soon as we get the ball, the keeper, get to centre-backs, wing-backs, get forward, and that is exactly what happened. We'll show you the assist in a second. We're going to get stuck in, standard defensive line, high press system, trigger that press as much as possible, and these tactics with the wing backs absolutely cooked. 9 assists on each, on right back and left back, most in the entire team. Unbelievable. And obviously goals, pretty much all of them coming from Barry Eze, the absolute king. That was Crystal Palace. We ended up finishing in 7th place in the Premier League and won the FA Cup. So Ole Glasner, some unreal tactics. We now move on to Sean Dyche and his fantastic tactics, and these are actually very, very good and underrated as well. A lot of people won't have clicked on this video for Sean Dyche tactics, but if you're looking to play sort of a mid-block long ball, we actually created some genius tactics. So starting off, a sweeper keeper on defend in goal, with wing back on support on the right and the left, both with tackle harder, with 2 ball playing defenders with no further instructions. We then have the ball midfielder on support and a DM on support, DM with tackle harder, inverted winger on the left-hand side, tackle harder, inverted winger on the right-hand side, tackle harder, and an attack midfielder on support in Cam, with dribble less and tackle harder, and an advanced forward on attack up front, no further instructions. A positive mentality in possession, slightly higher tempo, middle on the passing directness, play out of defence, pass into space, and a fairly wide attacking width. In transition, we are counter-pressing, countering, and taking short kicks, but out of possession, that high defensive line, that high press system, and that triggering the press slightly more often. That is the standard variation. We then move into a more traditional 4-2-3-1. We have wing backs on attack on the right and left now, with sit narrower and tackle harder on both. So still being compact, and when they get forward, they're looking to get into the half spaces in between the wingers. DM on support and a ball midfielder on support, both with no further instructions. Same goes for the centre backs. Inside forward on support on the right hand side, sit narrower and tackle harder, with an inside forward on support on the left, the exact same. An attack midfielder on attack, now roaming from position and tackling harder, with that advanced forward on attack. Still a positive mentality, but you can see now looking to keep the ball a bit more, play a bit more sexy Sean Dyche football. Shorter passing directness, slightly higher tempo, more expressive into space, and fairly wide on the attacking width. In transition, still countering, counter-pressing, and taking short goal kicks with a high defensive line, a high press, and preventing that short goal distribution, with triggering the press slightly more often. And then we go into the defensive 4-3-3 shut up shop tactics. A sweeper keeper on defend in goal, with 2 fullbacks either side on support with tackle harder, 2 ball playing defenders, no further instructions, with an anchor in front with tackle harder. We then have 2 box to boxes, both with tackle harder just in front of them, with wingers on support left and right, with get further forward and tackle harder, with an advanced forward on the attack up front with tackle harder. We are set to cautious on the mentality. In possession, fairly wide, pass into space, play out defence, hit them early crosses, play for set pieces, standard directness and tempo. In transition, we are no longer counter-pressing. We are getting back as a 4-3-3, but when we get the ball, we are countering and slowing pace down from the goalkeeper. Out of possession, we are set to trap them inside, standard defensive line, high press system, and trigger that press slightly more often. And this got us to winning the FA Cup and coming 8th in the Premier League on 66 points. So Sean Dyche's 4-2-3-1 absolutely cooked as well. We now have Marco Silva's Fulham tactics, starting off with a goalkeeper in defend in goal. No further instructions. Defensively, we are set up with 2 wing-backs on attack, with cross more often and stay wider, both the exact same, with 2 ball-playing defenders, no further instructions. We have wing-back on support on the left, winger on support on the left and the right, no further instructions, with a box-to-box midfielder, with shoot more often, close down more and tackle harder, with a ball-winning midfielder on pass it shorter, an attack midfielder on support with roam through position, moving the channels and close down more, with a complete forward on attack up front with no further instructions. We are set to a positive mentality in possession, play out defence left and right and run at the defence with whipped crosses on as well. In transition, counter and take short goal kicks, and out of possession, a high defensive line, a mid-block system, prevent the short goal distribution and stop crosses. Now I'll be honest, this tactic is not the best tactic of Football Manager, but it's more of a recreation of Marco Silva. Having that mid-block actually hampers us a hell of a lot. We end up finishing in 10th. It's one of the only ones we didn't win a trophy in, or didn't absolutely smash the Premier League in above our expectations. This is about where I expected us to finish, and it's where we finished. So that probably says enough. We move on to the attacking variations then. We change to a 4-2-3-1. Goalkeepers and defenders stay the exact same, but we now have a ball midfielder on defend with pass it shorter, and a box-to-box next to him on shoot more often, close down and tackle harder. We now have an inverted winger on the right-hand side, no further instructions, with an inside forward on the left-hand side on attack, no further instructions. The attack midfielder is still set to support, to roam, move into channels and close down more, with a complete forward on attack with no further instructions whatsoever. We are still set to a positive mentality in possession, same directness and tempo, run defence, play it out from defence, left and right with whipped crosses. In transition, counter, short goal kicks, and a high defensive line, high press system, stop crosses, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press slightly more often. And then finally, we have the defensive 4-4-1-1 with a goalkeeper and defend in goal. Wing backs on support, right and left now rather than attack, with cross more often and stay wider, with them 2 ball playing defenders. We then have 2 defensive wingers, not really the greatest. Well, to be honest, very difficult positions to nail. And I feel like the players don't help too much. I think Sessegnon's very good for it. Adama Traore, not so much, but we had to get him in the team, and that's what he played as. A DLP on support next to him, and close down more and tackle harder, with that ball midfielder on defend, with pass it's shorter. Attack midfielder on support. Rome moving the channel to close down more, with that complete forward on attack. Balanced mentality in possession, now slightly more direct, slightly higher tempo, and sometimes time wasting. Play out of defence with the whipped crosses. In transition, just slow pace down and take short goal kicks. And out of position, the low block, the standard defensive line. Trigger the press on standard, prevent short distribution still, get stuck in and stop crosses. And that right there is Marco Silva's 3 variations for Fulham tactics. The first tactical recreation I done for the 24-25 season was Ipswich, and this is what we cooked up for the legend that is Kieran McKenna. And my God, did we overperform as well, but we'll get into that in just a few minutes time. Now I imagine the signings are going to be very different to what they've got in real life, etc. I haven't looked at this save for over 3 months, but this is what we come up with. A sweeper keeper on defend in goal. No further instructions. Wing back on support at the right. Cross aim centre, stay wider and tackle harder. Same on the left hand side. 2 ball playing defenders on defend, with a DLP on support on the left hand side with tackle harder, and a ball midfielder on hold from position on the right hand side. We then have inside forward on support, roam from position, tackle harder. Inside forward on support, roam from position, tackle harder. A shadow striker on attack with shoot more often, and a target forward on attack, moving the channels and tackle harder. Positive on the mentality. In possession, standard on directness and tempo. Play for set pieces. Play defence, focus left and right, and a fairly wide attacking width. In transition, counter and take short goal kicks. And out of possession, a standard defensive line, a high press system. Trigger the press slightly more often and get stuck in. We now move on to the attacking variation, where we now have more attacking wing backs. Goalkeeper stays the same, but we now have wing back on attack on right and left, with cross aim centre, stay wider and tackle harder. The centre backs stay the same, and I believe the DMs stay the same as well. The inside forwards stay the same as well, roam for position and tackle harder. The shadow striker stays the same, but we now have an advanced forward on attack with tackle harder. So the wing backs get further forward, and the striker is no longer looking to hold up possession, but gets in behind. Still on a positive mentality. In possession, now fairly wide attacking width, focusing left and right, playing our defence, but now with a shorter passing directness and a higher tempo. In transition, counter press, counter, take short goal kicks, and out of possession, a high defensive line, a high pressing system. Trigger the press more often and get stuck in. Now this formation was very rarely used, as there's not many teams in the Premier League we can play attacking against. We are mainly using the standard, and probably more often than not also using the defensive variation as well. We switched it to a 3-back system. Sweeper keeper on defend, ball playing defender, defend left and right, no further instructions, with a cover in the middle. We then had 2 wing backs on support, cross aim centre, stay wider and tackle harder, with the same 2 DMs, DLP and ball winning midfielder. Then an inside forward on attack on the left with tackle harder, and the same on the right, with a target forward on attack, moving the channels and tackle harder. A balanced mentality. In possession, slightly more direct, focusing play than left and right, and playing out of defence and playing for set pieces. In transition, we are set to regroup and counter, and out of possession we are trapping them inside, standard defensive line, high press system, getting stuck in and trigger the press more often. But this formation absolutely cooked, same as the standard, and as mentioned when we used it, this one was quite good as well. We ended up finishing 9th with the Tractor Boys in the Premier League, 50 points, a -9 goal difference, absolutely fine. European football is heading to Portman Road. On to the next. And just a quick one, this is a halfway point in the video. If you guys want to download any of these tactics, they are all available on the Patreon down below. This has taken me over 3 months to create all the tactics, all the reboot files, etc. They are all available on Patreon, £5 a month, and at this point you get access to every single Premier League manager's tactics, and it's a way of helping support me. And you guys have been legends this year. We've hit 10k subscribers. I couldn't be happier. We're now at 11k, and next year for FM25, I want to go big. 25k, 30k, we want to have a smashing year, and hopefully it's the same for FM25 as well. If you do want to download these tactics, Patreon is the place. Of course, you can copy every single tactic directly from the video, but if you want to show your support and get the tactics easily, Patreon is where it is at. Thank you so much. Let's get on to the second half. Next up is the Leicester 4-3-3 formation, and we start off with a sweeper keeper on defend in goal, with wing back on support left and right, with no further instruction on the right, but cross more often and tackle harder on the left. We have ball playing defenders in the middle, no further instructions, with an anchor man in front with no further instructions. We then have a DLP on support with dribble less and tackle harder, with a box to box next to him on no further instructions. A winger on attack, one of my favourite players coming from the Championship, Abdul Fatawu, absolute baller, cut inside with the ball, roam from position and tackle harder, with Steffi Mavadivi as the inside forward and attack on the left, with roam from position and tackle harder, with the advance forward on roam from position and tackle harder. Positive on the mentality. In possession, we are fairly wide, pass into space, player defence, shorter passing directness and a slightly higher tempo, with whipped crosses. In transition, counter, distribute quickly and take short goal kicks while out of possession. A mid-block with a high defensive line, get stuck in, prevent the short goal kick distribution and trigger the press more often. We then move to the attacking variation, very subtle changes. The defence, I believe, stays the exact same, which it does, but we move to a ball-winning midfielder on defend in front with no further instructions. These two midfielders stay the exact same, but the wingers change slightly. We have a winger on attack, cut inside, roam and tackle harder, and a winger on attack, the exact same on the left-hand side, advance forward on attack, roam and tackle harder. Positive on the mentality. In possession, all very, very similar here. In transition, the exact same as well, counter, distribute and take short goal kicks, or out of position, the same as well. Very subtle changes, but they do make a big difference. Mainly the DM and, well, really just the DM making him a ball winner, so he's more aggressive rather than the anchor. And then the defensive, we switch to a 3-4-3 system. We have a sweeper keeper in goal. We then have a ball player, and a ball player, all on defend with no further instructions. Wing back support on the left, cross more and tackle harder, same on the right. With a ball-winning midfielder on support on the left with take fewer risks and dribble less, and a defensive midfielder on support on the right with dribble less and tackle harder. We then move to a winger on support on the right, cut inside, roam and tackle harder, with an inside forward attack on the left with roam and tackle harder, advance forward, roam and tackle harder. On the mentality, we are set to balanced. In possession, fairly wide in the attacking width, pass into space, slightly more direct, standard tempo and sometimes time wasting, hit the early crosses with the whipped cross as well. We are set to counter, slow pace down, take short goal kicks, and out of possession, low block, standard defensive line, get stuck in and trigger the press slightly more often. And that is your defensive variation. We ended up finishing in 10th place, quarterfinals, the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. A very, very decent season for Leicester under Steve Cooper with his free tactics. We now go on to three big dog tactics, Liverpool, City and Manchester United, and starting off with Liverpool. Now this was just as Arne Slot was approached, so we've got Elise, we've got Vifer, but don't worry about that, we still won the league, and I'll show you the results in a second. We start with a sweeper keeper on support, no further instructions, with an inverted wing back on support on the right, no further instructions, a full back on support on the left, no further instructions, with two ball players, left hand side, dribble more and stay wider, another one on no further instructions. We then have a DLP on support in DM with a box to box just in front with dribble more and tackle harder, and a centre mid on attack with take more risks and stay wider. We have an inside forward on support on the left, no further instructions, and a wing on attack on the right with cut inside with the ball, with a complete forward on attack up front. Is a positive mentality. In possession, shorter on passing directness, highest tempo possible, play out for set pieces, work the ball into the box with a slightly narrow attacking width. In transition, we are countering, counter pressing, distributing centre backs and taking short goal kicks. Out of position, a much higher defensive line, a high press system and trigger the press more often while getting stuck in. Into number two, we change ever so slightly in the defence, the attacking variation. Goalkeeper stays the same. We now have an inverted wing back on attack with no further instructions because it's already 7 instructions on him. We then have a wing back on support on the left hand side with a ball playing defender with dribble ball and stay wider, and nothing on the other. Midfield stays the exact same. The front line stays the exact same. It's really just the wing backs change, so we give a much more aggressive wing back here, and the inverted wing back as well. We still stay as positive mentality in possession. We now pass it shorter, highest tempo possible, and still on the fairly narrow. Not too many differences here either. In transition, counter press, counter, centre backs, and take short goal kicks, and are still very, very similar here as well. Step up more, get stuck in, trigger the press more often, much higher defensive line, and a high press system. Really not too many changes between these ones, just the fullbacks. We then have the defensive variation where we then drop back a little bit. Again, a inverted wing back on support still stays with no further instructions. Goalkeeper stays the same, and the fullback on support stays with nothing. We then have two ball playing defenders with no further instructions, with a DLP on defend with no further instructions, a box to box midfielder on tackle harder, a centreman on support with stay wider. We then have the winger on attack with cut inside of the ball, inside forward on support, no further instructions, and a complete forward, no further instructions. We've then set to a positive mentality in possession, fairly narrow, shorter directness, higher tempo, work the ball into the box. In transition, counter press, distribute centre backs, and take short goal kicks. And our possession, still the high defensive line, probably change that down to higher rather than much higher. High press, get stuck in, and trigger the press more often. The changes between all three are very subtle, but that's because they all worked really, really well to the point when we won the Champions League, we won the Premier League, we got to the quarterfinals in both the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and the Data Hub, we absolutely cooked, scoring loads of goals, conceding hardly any, and we sold Salah and Van Dijk to make it harder as well. Didn't matter at all. We absolutely smashed it with Arne Slot's 4-3-3. We then move on to Pep's 4-2-3-1, and we sold De Bruyne and Ederson on this to see if we could make it harder. We still won absolutely everything, so we'll go through that in a second. But starting off, a sweeper keeper on attack on goal with no further instructions, a fullback on support on right, take for your risks, and a fullback on support on left with no further instructions. We then move to a ball-playing defender on the left-hand side of close down less, and a libero on support with dribble less and shoot less often. We then have an anchor in the left DM with tackle harder, and a volante on support next to him with dribble more and move into channels. We have an inverted winger on support, cross aim centre, and roam from position, a winger on attack, cross aim centre, cut inside with the ball, an attacking midfielder, roam from position with the poacher Haaland up front with shoot more often. We are set to a positive mentality in possession, narrow on the width, shorter directness, shorter on the tempo, player defence, focus for the middle and overlap right, work the ball into the box, be more expressive and have low crosses. A lot of different instructions, but it works an absolute treat. In transition, counter press and take short goal kicks, and out of possession, trap them outside, much higher defensive line and a high press system, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press much more often. We then get into the attacking variation, which is mental. Still got the same sweeper keeper on attack, fullback stays the same, libero stays the same, ball player stays the same, wing back on support now on the left hand side of cut inside and tackle harder. The anchor man stays the same. We then move to a volante on attack with dribble more and move into channels. Inverted winger goes to attack with cross aim centre and roam from position. Winger on attack on the left hand side, cross aim centre, cut inside. Shadow striker now on attack with roam from position, keeping the poacher on shoot more often. Still positive mentality in possession, player defence through the middle, overlap right, work ball into box, low crosses, narrow width, be more expressive, standard tempo. In transition, counter press, take short goal kicks, and out of possession, still the exact same. Much higher defensive line, high press, trap outside, prevent the distribution, and the trigger press more often. With a defensive variant, it's not really very defensive, it's Manchester City, but we move on still. Super keeper on attack, no further instructions. Fullback on support, still on take for your risks. The libero then changes to defend with dribble less and shoot less often, with the ball player on close down less. Inverted fullback now though on the left hand side, really making it that sort of 3-back system. We then moves the anchor and defend on tackle harder. Roam playmaker on support, roam dribble more and move into channels. We then move on to the inverted wing back on attack, cross aim centre, roam, winger on attack, cross aim centre, cut inside. Attacking midfielder on support, meant to link up the play with that roam from position with the poacher on attack. Shoot more often, a balanced mentality in possession. We are now just playing out defence and focus on play for the middle, no longer worrying about that overlap on the right hand side. Work the ball into the box, lower crosses, shorter passing directness, standard tempo, more expressive, narrow attacking width. In transition, counter press, counter and take short goal kicks, and out of position, just a higher defensive line, trap outside, higher press systems, prevent the sort of goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press more often. We won the Premier League, we won the Carabao, we won the Champions League, we won the FA Cup. It was an absolute joke. And of course, Erling Haaland scored a stupid amount of goals with 43, but the rest all absolutely smashed it as well. And that is Pep Guardiola's 3 fantastic formations. And the last of the big boys, we have Erik ten Hag and his 4-2-3-1 system. Now we start off in goal with a sweeper keeper on support, a wing back on support on the right, dribble more and set narrower. On the left, run wide and stay wider. Exactly what United do. One inverted, one staying wider. Ball playing defender on the left hand side, dribble ball and tackle harder. On the right hand side, no further instructions. Then the ball with the midfielder on defend, no further instructions. The volante on support next to him with get further forward and tackle harder. A winger on attack on the right hand side, cut inside, close down more and tackle harder. The inside forward on attack on the left hand side will stay wider and close down more. With an attacking midfielder on support, take more risks, dribble less, roam around and tackle harder. And an advanced forward on attack up front, close down more and tackle harder. We are set to a positive mentality in possession. We are overlapping left, playing out of the defence, passing it into space and playing with a fairly wide attacking width. Standard on the passing's directness, slightly higher on the tempo, run the defence and whip the crosses. In transition, we are counter-pressing, countering and taking short goal kicks and out of possession. A high defensive line, a mid-block line of engagement. I'm not sure why that's there. It should be a high press. Get stuck in, prevent the short goal kick distribution and trigger the press much more often. That is the first formation. We then go to our attacking variation and there is only very subtle changes. I'm going to click through them just in case there is anything that is different you guys can copy. But this is all the same. We then move to a DLP on defend rather than a ball winner with tackle harder. The right winger then goes to wing on support rather than attack, which is a bit weird, but it allows us to have Bruno more attacking. So we cut inside, close down more and tackle harder. The inside forward stays the same. The attack midfielder is now just get further forward and tackle harder. He's no longer going to be dropping up in these positions and getting on the ball and distributing them. He is looking to score goals as well with the advanced forward on attack with close down and tackle harder. Positive on the mentality in possession, shorter directness, higher tempo, out of defence, into space, running the defence, fairly wide attacking width and whipped crosses. In transition, we are counter-pressing, countering and taking short goal kicks and out of possession. Still the high press and white set to mid-block with the higher defensive line. Get stuck in, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press much more often. And finally, the defensive variation drops the cam back to central midfield. And it also changes a few other things as well. So the fullbacks are now on fullback on supports with dribble more and sit narrower. The left-hand side still with run wide and stay wider. Ball playing defender on the left, dribble more, tackle harder. Ball playing defender on the right, no further instructions. We really just have now 2 proper DMs, an anchor on defend and a ball winner on defend, just looking to cut out possession and get the attacking players on the ball. Rowing playmaker in the centre of midfield, more direct passes, close down more and tackle harder. A winger on attack on the right, cut inside, close down, tackle harder. Inside forward on attack on the left, stay wide, close down more. And the advanced forward on attack up front, close down more and tackle harder. A balanced mentality in possession, fairly wide attacking width, standard on the directness, higher on the tempo, pass into space, whipped crosses, play for set pieces and run at defend. In transition, counter and take short goal kicks. And out of possession, a mid-block, a high defensive line, get stuck in and trigger the press more often. Now we had a fantastic season, getting 89 points, getting pipped by City and Villa by a point, gets us in 3rd. We did win the Europa League and the FA Cup and data hub wise it was fantastic. We played such good football and it was one of my favourite tactics to create, and Højlund scored 37 goals. That is the Ten Hag 4-2-3-1/4-3-3 tactics. Next up is Eddie Howe and his attacking 4-3-3 formations. We start off with a goalkeeper on defend, in goal, no further instructions. A wing back on support on the right, cross from byline, run wide. Wing back on support on the left with cross from byline. We have a ball playing defender, left and right hand side with dribble more. A DLP on defend, no further instructions. A Mezzala on support, no further instructions. And a centre mid on the right with get further forward and roam from position. We then have our Anthony Gordon, winger on attack with run wide with ball, an inverted winger on support on the right, roam from position and sit narrow with that complete forward on attack up front. We are set to a positive mentality in possession, player defence, focus left and right, shorter directness, higher tempo, whipped crosses in transition, counter press, counter, dispute to the centre backs, and out of possession, a high defensive line, a high press system, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press more often. We then go to our attacking variation, which is just slightly more positive. Sweeper keeper on support, no further instructions. Wing back on attack, run wide with the ball, and wing back on support, cross from byline. Two ball players, no further instructions on the left. On the right hand side, dribble more. We have a DLP on support with no further instructions. A centre mid with roam from position and get further forward, and a Mezzala on attack with no further instructions. Winger stays with run wide with ball on attack, and inside forward on attack now goes roam from position and set narrower with the advanced forward on attack up front. An attacking mentality in possession, pass into space, focus left and right and play out of defence. A standard passing directness, a slightly higher tempo, be more expressive, whipped crosses and fairly narrow attacking width. In transition, counter pressing, counter, dispute to the centre backs and out of possession. A high defensive line, a high press system, trigger the press much more often, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and step up more. And finally, the defensive variation, we have sweeper keeper on support, no further instructions, wing back, cross from byline and run wide with ball, and cross from byline with the wing back on the left as well. Ball players, same on the left, no further. Dribble more on the right, the exact same. We're going to have our ball winning midfielder and defend on the base of the midfield three, with a box to box on the left, a DLP on the right. Inside forward on attack on the right hand side, roam from position and sit narrower. Winger on attack on the left with run wide, and an advanced forward looking to stretch the defence. Balanced mentality in possession, standard directness, standard tempo, whipped crosses into space, play in left and right and play out of defence. In transition, counter press, counter, distributes the centre backs and out of possession, standard defensive line, high press system, get stuck in, trigger the press more often. With the Toon Army, we won the FA Cup, the Europa League and got top four. A fantastic season with Eddie Howe's 4-3-3. On to the final five, we have Nuno Espirito Santo, and we are starting off with sweeper keeper on support in goal, with a wing back on support on the right with tackle harder and tackle harder on the left as well. Moving on to the central defenders, two ball playing defenders on defend with an anchor on defend just in front. We then have a box to box midfielder and a Mezzala on support. Mezzala will take more risks, run wide of the ball and tackle harder. An inverted winger on attack on the left with stay wider and tackle harder. The winger on attack on the right with tackle harder. An advanced forward on attack with close down more, tackle harder and mark tighter. We have a positive mentality in possession. We are fairly wide on attacking width, passing it into space, playing out of defence, shorter passing directness and a higher tempo system, whipped crosses as well. In transition, counter, slow pace down and take short goal kicks, or out of possession, a high defensive line, a high press line of engagement, get stuck in and trigger the press more often. Now this tactic itself absolutely cooked, and the other two were great as well. I'll show you how he finished. It was sick from the Premier League, but I'll show you in a second the actual points at it, etc. Unbelievable with this team. Sweeper keeper on support in goal in the attacking variation, wing back on right and left, both with tackle harder, and the defenders stay the same as well. But we now move to a 4-2-3-1. One defensive midfielder on support, the ball winner, just a ball winner on support, both no further instructions. A winger on attack on the right, tackle harder, an inverted forward on the left with stay wider and tackle harder, with an attacking midfielder on support, take more risks, roam from position and tackle harder, and an advanced forward on attack, close down, tackle harder, mark tighter. Positive on the mentality in possession, fairly wide, shorter passing directness and slightly higher tempo. In transition, we are set to counter press, slow pace down and take short kicks, while out of possession, a higher press, a higher defensive line and trigger the press slightly more often. And the defensive variation, we now drop to a 4-2-3-1, or sort of a 4-4-1-1, I suppose, the lot deeper wingers. Still the same goalkeepers, wing backs and defenders. The wing backs do just have a sit narrower on them as well. We then have a DM on defend, a ball winner on defend, wingers on support, both with get forward and tackle harder, an attacking midfielder on support and tackle harder, and the advanced forward still with the same instructions. It is now a balanced mentality. In possession, we are into space. Player defence, more direct with a slower tempo and sometimes time wasting, fairly wide attacking width. In transition, countering, slowing pace down and take short goal kicks. And out of possession, the standard line, the high press, the get stuck in and trigger the press as much as possible. As mentioned, these three tactics in conjunction absolutely cooked for Nottm Forest. We come 6th in the Premier League on 64 points, just 3 points away from the top 4, and come runners up in the FA Cup. So 3 fantastic Nuno tactics. One of the last teams we rebuilt was Southampton. They didn't even get their own specific video, but we have got their tactics here today. And I have to be honest, Southampton was a very tough team to crack. We have 3 formations, which are good for Southampton. I think it's more the team let us down a little bit, but we'll go through the tactics anyway. We have a sweeper keeper on defend, ball player on the left and the right, both with stay wider, and the middle with no further instructions. 2 wing backs on attack with stay wider, close down more and tackle harder. That is left and right, with a DLP on defend in the middle. We have a ball player midfielder on get further forward and tackle harder, and a Metzala on support with run wide and tackle harder. An advanced forward on attack on the right hand side, close down more and tackle harder, with a complete forward on attack with close down and tackle harder. Positive mentality, shorter passing directness, slightly higher tempo, play out of defence and focus left and right, and hit early crosses with a fairly wide attacking width. In transition, counter press and take short kicks, and out of possession, get stuck in, standard defensive line, high press system, trigger the press more often. That is the standard variation. We pretty much never use this variation because we didn't have many teams we could go out there and absolutely batter. Now, I believe it's all the exact same in the defence and in goal. Wing backs are the same as well. Midfield is where things change. We go to a DLP and defend as a middle central midfielder with 2 Metzalas either side with run wide and tackle harder. 2 advanced forward on attack, both with close down more and tackle harder. Positive mentality, in possession, the exact same. Transition, counter press, take short goal kicks, and out of possession, the exact same as well. So very, very similar to the first one, just moving that midfielder up and having 2 more creative midfielders. And in the final one, the more defensive variation, we use this more often than not. 2 advanced forwards still both on attack, just being more aggressive than having that complete forward, just leaving them 2 up there to press and close down and get stuck in. Box to box midfielder, tackle harder, ball winning midfielder on support, no further instructions, anchor on defend. 2 wing backs on support with close down more and tackle harder. Defense stays the same, stay wider on the 2 wider ones and middle on the standard, and sweeper keeper on defend. Balanced mentality, in possession, play out defence, focus left and right, hit early crosses, fairly wide width, but standard directness, standard tempo, and sometimes time wasting. In transition, counter and take short goal kicks, and out of possession, now a mid block and a standard defensive line, getting stuck in and triggering the press more often. Now, these tactics helped us get all the way to 14th place for Southampton, 44 points, safety, and the semi-finals of an FA Cup. Just I think the team wasn't quite strong enough. I sort of said it in the rebuild video. My recommendation would be to change this striker to someone a lot more fast-paced, just like Adam Armstrong, because he cooked. Left striker, done absolutely nothing. 3 to go. Southampton is done. Russell Martin's 3-5-2. Next up then is Big Ange Postecoglou and his 4-3-3 systems. We'll start on the standard, which is a 4-2-3-1, starting off with a sweeper keeper on support in goal with pass it shorter, an inverted wing back on the right hand side, get further forward and close down, with a standard wing back on the left on support with close down more. 2 ball playing defenders, left hand side, no further instructions, right hand side on stay wider to cover off the inverted wing back. We then have 2 midfielders, 1 a ball winning midfielder on support, take fewer risks, and a DLP, stay wider and close down more. An attacking midfielder on support, get further forward, roam from position, close down more and tackle harder, with an inside forward and attack on the left with pass it shorter, roam and close down more. Out of the right hand side, a wing on attack, pass it shorter, cut inside of the ball, roam from position and close down more, with a Trequartista on attack up front. One of my favourite positions on FM, a Trequartista on attack as a striker. It's like a poacher slash playmaker. That's probably slightly different now with Dominic Solanke. This was before he joined the club, but still a very solid position to use. Positive on the mentality. In possession, we are playing our defence, focusing play down the middle, overlap left, pass into space, work the ball into box, low crosses, shorter passing directness, standard tempo, and be more expressive. In transition, counter press, take short kicks and distribute to the back line. And out of possession, a high defensive line, high press line of engagement, trigger that press and prevent the short goalkeeper distribution. Into the attacking variation, subtle changes. Defence all stays the exact same. Ball winning fielder stays the same, but you now go to an advanced playmaker rather than a deep line playmaker with roam, stay wider and close down more. The right winger goes to an inside forward with pass it shorter, roam and close down more, and there's the same on the left hand side as well. Attacking midfielder now on attack with roam, close down and tackle harder, and an advanced forward on attack with pass it shorter and close down more. Attacking mentality in possession, play out defence, focus through the middle, slightly higher tempo, slightly shorter passing directness, pass into space, work ball into box, low crosses and be more expressive. In transition, counter press, distribute and to the centre backs and full backs and take short goal kicks. And out of possession, high defensive line, step up more, high press, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press much more often. And finally, the 4-3-3 variation. Defence has actually stayed very, very similar. Slightly less instructions on the right wing back and the left wing back, but all on standard other than the right centre back going on stay wider. We now have a ball winning midfielder in the base of DM with no further instructions, with a box to box with no instructions and an advanced playmaker just on close down more on support. Wing on attack on the right, cut inside, roam and close down. Inside forward on the left, roam and close down. They complete ball on attack with pass it shorter and close down. Positive mentality in possession, slightly higher tempo, shorter passing directness, play out defence through the middle, pass into space and be more impressive. Counter press, counter, distribute to the centre backs and full backs, take short goal kicks. Out of possession, the standard defensive line, high press line of engagement, prevent the short goalkeeper distribution and trigger the press much more often. That got us to second place with Spurs in the Premier League, semi-finals of the Champions League, and we won the FA Cup as well. Best thing about it was it was just very well rounded, good goal scoring, good defensively, and obviously for Spurs, second place, absolutely top. Ange's free tactics, beautiful. Moving on to our penultimate set of tactics, it is Julian Lopetegui's West Ham. We start off with a sweeper keeper on defend in goal, a wing back on support on the right, cross more often and stay wider, with a wing back on attack on the left with cross more often and stay wider, just making it so the left hand side is slightly better than the right. These wing backs, we'll show you the results from them in a minute. Unbelievable. Two ball players on defend, both will stay wider, so we have got a halfback just in front who's going to drop in and create that free back system. No further instructions. Box to box midfielder, take more risks and tackle harder. With an advanced playmaker on roam from position and tackle harder. Inverted winger on the left, cross less often, roam from position and sit narrower. With an inside forward attack on the right, shoot more often, sit narrower and tackle harder. With that target forward on attack, close down more and tackle harder. We are set to a positive mentality in possession, shorter passing directness, shorter tempo, and play out defence, overlap left and right with whipped crosses. In transition, counter press, distribute to centre backs and take short goal kicks, and out of possession, trap them outside, high defensive line, high press system, and trigger the press slightly less often. Lopetegui is not known for his high press tactics. Going on to the attacking variation, we move from the sort of more supportive right hand side to the standard on the attack, same as the left of cross more often and stay wider. This stays the same, but our midfield changes ever so slightly. We now have a Metzala on support with take more risks and tackle harder next to our attacking advanced playmaker. We now go to an inverted winger on attack on the left hand side, still with cross less, roam more and sit narrower. Well, the inside forward goes into attack as well with shoot more often, sit narrower and tackle harder, keeping that target forward up front. Still a positive mentality, and I believe this is all the exact same as well. Overlapping left and right, playing out of defence, shorter directness with a higher tempo of whipped crosses. In transition, counter, distribute to the centre backs and take short goal kicks, and high defensive line, high press system, trap outside. Going into the defensive variation, again, very subtle changes. We now have our wing back on support back on the right hand side, and that is copied on the left as well. Still the same with the ball players. Rather than have them on stay wider though, we just make a more narrow free back with the halfback. We have a Carriello on support with tackle harder and a DLP on support on stay wider. Inside forward on attack, close down more, tackle harder. Inverted wing on attack, sit narrower, close down more, and a target forward now on support with no further instructions. Balanced mentality in possession, standard directness, standard width, sometimes time wasting, player out of defence, hit early crosses, whipped crosses, play for set pieces, in transition, counter press, counter and take short goal kicks, out of possession, stand the defensive line, high press and get stuck in. Now, I want to show you the results of the assisting from the wing-back positions. Wan-Bissaka, 10 assists, Emerson and Creswell sharing 5 and 7. So double figure assists basically for both of our wing backs. Ward-Prowse was fantastic, Bowen as well. And the goals, we got the target forward cooking, 19 for Nicolas Füllkrug, and it got us into 4th place in the Premier League and an FA Cup victory. So congratulations, West Ham, 3 fantastic Lopetegui tactics. And we finish up on Wolves with just the one tactic, the 3-4-3 system for Wolves. Kicking off with a goalkeeper on defend, a ball-playing defender on the right will stay wider and the left on stay wider. The central defender on cover. Wing-back on support on the left, cross more often. Wing-back on support on the right, cross more often. DM on support, tackle harder. DLP on support, more direct passes. Attack midfielder on attack, dribble more and roam from position and move into channels. With a shallow striker on attack with roam from position. Advanced forward on attack, no further instructions. Positive on the mentality, in possession, slightly more direct, standard tempo, run in defence and pass into space with low crosses, in transition, counter press at counter and distribute to the centre backs, and out of position, high defensive line, mid block, trap them outside and trigger the press much more often, and that got us into 10th place in the Premier League, which is about as good as you can expect from a Wolves tactic with this current Wolves side. A massive thank you to everyone who has watched through all these tactics. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have enjoyed the Premier League rebuild experiment. I'm going to be off for the next 3 or 4 days to create the rest of our fantastic videos going in to the end of the FM24 cycle. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll speak to you next time.